The Police and Crime Commissioner of Surrey, who is officially, nominally a Conservative, has been guilty of covering up grooming gangs in the Surrey area and deliberately attempting to arrest people who are not from the Muslim community in order to make it look like there is no problem with SA from immigrant communities. This is an absolute stonker and a real disgrace. Hello everyone, this is Andre Walker. Look, if every single person that watched this video subscribed right now, we'd be on 200,000 subscribers, and that would give us so much of a better opportunity to put our message out, because that message is extremely important. Lisa Townsend is a Conservative officially. We know that they're not really Conservative in any meaningful sense, but she is nominally a Conservative. And she had a problem that within Surrey, there was a huge spike in the number of SA grooming offences that took place. And so obviously, like most police forces in the country, they were desperate to find a way to ensure that immigrants were not blamed for this, even though they're clearly guilty. I don't know if you know that Afghans are 22 times more likely to commit this offence than other people in the normal community. So they came up with an idea. It was called the Jog On campaign. And what they would do is they would get female police officers to run round predominantly white, Christian, British areas. And if anybody made any comments about the woman, who apparently was quite attractive, or wolf whistled or anything like that, then those people would be arrested. Lisa Townsend, without any evidence, says that wolf whistling is a escalator offence in the same way that flashing is an escalator offence. There's of course no evidence to suggest that's true, but what it gives her the ability to do is to say, look, this isn't about third world culture. This isn't about uncontrolled immigration. It's about misogyny. If you remember Jess Phillips, when she was being screamed at by people who literally looked like the Taliban, she said it had nothing to do with the fact that they were recent immigrants to the country. It had everything to do with more general misogyny, because what they're attempting to do is say this: look, all men are the same. All men essentially are arists. All men essentially cannot be trusted around women and children. And so what we need to do is effectively crack down on all men. Now, you can only do that if you have a fair number of white men, of Christian men, that you have falsely accused of SA offences. And this Jog On campaign was an effort to move towards that. Well, let me just say why I'm so upset about this. Obviously, there's the issue of taxpayers' money being spent, but also it's about muddying the waters. It's about ensuring that when the statistics come out, they can say the thing they've always wanted to say. You are much more likely to be the victim of a Brit than you are of an immigrant. Of course, the statistic is what I call the Philomena Kunk statistic. I know I've said this to you a billion times and I'm being repetitious, but just in case you haven't heard, what she said was 40% of people injured in road traffic accidents was as a result of drink driving, whereas 60% wasn't. Therefore, you are safer being driven by somebody drunk. And I think everybody can see why that's nonsense. But of course, what then happens is you go, okay, so whilst you are less likely to be the victim of SA from an immigrant, based on their population percentage, they are much more likely to be a perpetrator than the average person. But if you can criminalise as many people as possible, then you start to make that statistic look untrue as well. I've got to be honest with you. I don't understand why the establishment, why the Surrey police, why Lisa Townsend is like this. If it were me, personally, what I would say is, look, there is a problem with this particular offence. I don't want to put up signs in migrant hotels saying, please don't R the local girls in the area. I personally just don't want these criminals to be brought to Britain. I think that if you want to come to the United Kingdom, you're very welcome to come, but what you need is you need to be able to add something. You need to be able to have some skills, or you need to be able to have some wealth, or something that contributes to the community. What these people on the small boats are the dross, the dregs, the waifs, and the strays. And of course, we've always said this, that this is a great experiment in Britain, isn't it? Can you bring the least talented, the least educated, the least wealthy, the most backward people in the world, can you bring them to a wealthy country, give them benefits, and then see if they will thrive? And of course, they have thrived. What they've thrived in doing is in bringing in their own third world culture. But of course, Surrey police will never admit that. They will say that misogyny is a risk to everyone, that these people are no different from your average man, and that all of you who are male are guilty of this. Or if you're not guilty, then you are hoping to be guilty at some point in the future. And it's just the reason why we are stopping migrants is because we're just racist and we've got a bit of a downer on those migrants. I find it despicable, but here is the final thing that upsets me. The way that Lisa Townsend has been complaining about the vitriol she's got online. Of course she's going to get vitriol online. Oh, by the way, you could paper the walls with so-called death threats against me. I'm not interested. You know I'm not bothered about any of that. Somebody makes a rude comment to me on Twitter. It just doesn't bother me. But of course, these snowflakes get very, very upset. Oh, they were all rude to me online. Well, I would say that being rude to Lisa Townsend online is a great thing to do, because the fundamentals here are this. She is using taxpayers' money in order to disguise a really, really serious crime and instead smear every single man that lives in Surrey. Now, I personally think that is about as bad as it can get from Police and Crime Commissioner. But finally, what about Kemi Badenoch herself? I mean, look, the Conservatives are just all over the place on every single issue. But why on earth, on the issue of grooming gangs, they can't come out as strongly and as stridently as, say, Ben Habib or Nigel Farage or anybody else has come out against them? Are they not actually patriotic people? I don't think they are. The Conservative Party that I joined in 1995 is long gone. Now we have a group of people who are really, in practice, Liberal Democrats, people who would fight tooth and nail to allow uncontrolled immigration to continue, who would fight tooth and nail to say that misogyny is the problem and not immigration, who would fight tooth and nail to say that the third world is equal but different to Britain. And also, of course, to make sure that people like Sadiq Khan, that people like Andy Burnham are able to continue to cover up the major scandal in this country. You are paying for all of this. You are paying for the police to cover up the SA offences which are so damaging to our society. I made a video the other day that many of you watched where the Epping attacker is going to get British citizenship. How? Well, all he'll do when he's released from prison is he'll say that if he went back to Ethiopia, then he would be potentially at risk of harm. And so under the Human Rights Act, he will be allowed to stay. There was a guy once who emmed his own children and then sued under the Human Rights Act to say that he had a right to family life and we couldn't deport him on the grounds he needed to regularly see his children. Children who, by the way, did not want to see him. What about the guy who said that he couldn't be deported because his son didn't like the quality of the chicken nuggets in the country that he came from? Or the man who ran over a child and said that his cat would be sad if he was deported back to his country of origin. What are we talking about? So Lisa Townsend, from the bottom of my heart, let me say you are a bad person. Also, I want to remind you, please, please, please do subscribe. And also you can donate to the Patriot Fund. The link is below. Until next time, goodbye.